See, it doesn't matter what size it is. What really matters is what you do with it. And that's why I'm proud to announce that mine is 65mm. I am, of course, talking about the Tinywhoop that's on the table right now for review, the BetaFPV Air 65. Let's get this thing unboxed. On the front of the box, we can see we've got some lovely graffiti art. I really do like this from BetaFPV. I really do think this looks really nice. You can even see a reflection of the camera in the box. I'm sure my Turkish friend Arda will be looking really close to see if he can see me. On the back, we can see it's the Air 65. It's the racing version with the 5-in-1 ESC board. What does that mean? Well, the spec of the racing version is as follows. We've got 0702 SE motors. We have got the 5-in-1 flight controller, and we've got Gemfan 1219S 3-bladed props. We've got a VTX of between 25 and 400 milliwatts. And we've got a quoted weight coming in of 17.4 grams, which we're going to check. And we've also got, obviously, ELRS built in to the flight controller as well as everything else, making it that whole 5-in-1. Now, probably what I should have done here is let you listen to the ASMR of me ripping open the box, but I didn't, so you're just going to have to listen to my annoying voice instead. Sorry about that. You can file a complaint, and I will ignore it. So let's open the box and see what's inside. As always with BetaFPV, it's all packaged really well. You get a spare set of Gemfan props. You've also got a set of Gemfan props on the quad ready to go. You've got the USB adapter board and a few spare screws there. You're going to need that to set up. You've got a spare canopy. Now this is foreshadowing because I do break my canopy later on. And then you've got the BetaFPV Air 65. And we'll take some real close-up shots and have a real good look at it. And you've also got a QR code for the knowledge base with all the manuals and the CLIs to download if you was to need them later on in its life cycle. I think we can all agree it does look pretty nice. But, like I say, the most important thing now is that we weigh it to check whether or not it really is 17 grams. Now, you can see that my scales are about 50 years old and I do need to replace them. I should have a set coming from Amazon today, so you won't have to look at these ugly things ever again. But what's most important is we weigh it, and it comes in at 17 grams, which is incredibly light. And actually, I will mention, even though we're not at the flight sort of footage part yet, it really does feel lighter than other Tinywhoops on the market. You can feel it's got that sort of bounce to it. It is really, really impressive. But anyway, let's move on. Now, you all should know by now, one thing we do like to do on this channel is take a really good close-up look with our macro lens. Get really close in there, look at the QC of the frames, the motors, the solder joints, and just make sure that everything is as it should be. Straight away, we can see on this shot that everything is looking really, really nice. And I'll be honest, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and sort of try and build drama. As we look at some of the close-up shots, you can actually see that this thing is actually dripping in quality. You know, from the look of the motors all the way down to the flight controller, even how they've put the ELRS antenna. So other manufacturers will have that red antenna that you can see there on screen, just hanging out of the front or hanging out of the bottom. BetaFPV have really thought where they're going to put it and how they're going to put it somewhere, and they've done really well with it. Which reminds me, actually, because I do crash it later on in the video, and I don't remember seeing that when I put the camera back in, so I am wondering if I've snapped that off. So I do need to check that, because that could cause me a problem later on. But looking at the flight controller, again, you can see we've got nice solder joints. Obviously, the flight controller is manufactured, so it's put together nicely. We can't see any sort of QC issues really going on there. And it's looking really good so far. Really nice, really very nice. Again, we can just about see the magnets on the motors. We've not got any excessive glue, any issues there. We've got the screws and everything's nice and clean and tight. And obviously the pigtail for the power cord, looking really nice. Don't expect to see any issues, but The reason I do this is purely because I have had brand new bind and fly quads in the past that have had QC issues with things like motors being rusty, screws being rusty, solder joints not being good. So as we mentioned solder joints, we'll take a look at the solder joints. Now these are obviously really, really tiny solder joints. So the fact that this is so nice is a credit to BetaFPV and how they've done these. You know, this is not an easy thing to do. Like soldering's not easy as it is, but soldering three wires in a tiny space like this right next to each other, really not easy. And we can see the STM chip in the middle there as well. And we've got some spare ports up at the top if you wanted to add, I don't know, anything you wanted to add. That's what FPV is about, isn't it? You do what you want to do and you fly it and you add to it how you want to add to it. You can see there, obviously the antenna at the back and the ELRS antenna as well. We've got the camera there with the VTX. Again, no notable issues anywhere around this quad, but it is always good to do this because you will be surprised. I mean, unfortunately, I wish I still had the videos from before when I got serious at doing this, but there were a couple of quads that were sent to me that was absolutely appalling. I'm glad to see that we do appear to have gotten better as we've got more mature as a community. The manufacturers are on board with that clearly, especially BetaFPV. And here are the 0702 SE 27,000 kV motors. Looking very nice in the studio there, I'm sure we can all agree. And on the other side of them, we will spin them round in a second, but on the other side of them, you can actually see the BetaFPV logo as well. So we've had a closer look at some of the QC. We can see here the motor coils and the magnets again on one of the motors are looking really nice. And we'll switch to the top view of the props. There's the Gemfan 1219Ss. And again, you can see the coils underneath there. Don't seem to have any problems at all. It's exactly what you would come to expect in 2025. There's no shocks that it's this good, but it's always good to check and make sure that we are getting the quality that we expect. So that's a deeper dive, a closer look. The next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to plug it in and we're going to need to set up our switches in Betaflight. And we're going to need to bind our ELRS. Now, the easiest way to do that is to follow on this video and watch the next section. Alrighty then, so we've got the adapter plugged in and I'm going to switch back and go back and show you what to do with that in a second. The easiest way to bind a new drone, obviously you can add your bind phrase, etc. But the easiest way is to plug your battery in 3 times really quick like I've just done there. Go to your ELRS Lua script and then scroll down and hit bind. And if you look in the top right hand side now of my Lua script, you'll see a little C in the corner, which confirms it is now bound. So our next action will be to plug in the adapter board underneath the drone and then plug that cable into the adapter board, should I say, and then plug it in to the USB. Once that's done, you'll get connection to your radio. As you can see again on the Lua script, you can see we're connected, and then I'll zoom in a second and I'll show how we're going to set up in Betaflight just to make sure that everything is how it should be. Now, first thing is first, we need to make sure we've got our arm switch set up, which we do, and then we'll scroll down and have a look at what the other modes are. So we've got angle, we've got horizon. We don't really need horizon. I wish Betaflight removed horizon mode, so we're going to get rid of that and we're going to add the beeper in. Just need to make sure you know which switch is which, and if you don't, just switch it to auto, flick them around, and you can find out which one is which. And this is how I'm going to set mine up, and then we'll move on to have a look at some of the other details of what's in Betaflight and what you may need to know, what you may need to change. So after doing all that, I would recommend you go into PID tuning, and then I would change the rates to how you want them. Now, I'm not going to go crazy wild with this because it is a Tinywhoop and I do want a little bit of controllability for hitting really small gaps. So I'm not going to go absolutely mental. I'm just going to go to about 1,000. Leave it at that and then we'll move on. So you join me at a very moist and windy park. I'm not going to talk through all of this flight footage because it's probably not going to need me to do so. But ultimately what we do is we hit a few gaps, we try a few mighty flips. I've never done a mighty flip before. What this drone is, and what you can probably see is already, is incredibly maneuverable. Like really, really maneuverable. I do make a few crashes, I do make a few mistakes. We've got turtle mode, so we can turtle mode out of it and bring it back. Not a problem, not a problem at all. You can see it's really light. You can feel it's really light. And like I say, it gives me that confidence to then do certain things that I haven't necessarily done with other drones before. You can see on the OSD, for anybody that is new, in the top right hand corner, we've got R825. I've just hit a tree. R825. That R825 means that we're on race band 8 and we're at 25 milliwatt. We've then got minus 52, minus 53. That's our sort of signal strength. And then we've got our link quality. So you've got the strength of your signal and the quality of your signal. Underneath that, you've got your battery. Now, people might be saying, it says land now and you're going really low. Why are you not landing? When it's a 1S, it's a little bit different. I generally tend to land on about 3.2 volts. When it freaks out and starts saying land now, if you just let off that throttle a little bit, it will recover really, really quickly. So it's not as essential as, say, you know, a 3S or a 4S or a 6S or whatever. Underneath, we can see the amp draw, the MAR draw. We've got the, excuse me, one is in the middle where it's saying low battery. Underneath that, we've got Air 65R, so that's the Air 65 race version, and that's the model of the copter we're using. On the right-hand side of the screen, we've got a little bit of a, what would you describe it as? Probably like a squiggle. And that's our throttle position, so you can see how much throttle we're having to give it to do certain things, and we will try like a 100% throttle run shortly. Underneath that, it says air. That's not related to the drone itself. What that is the mode that I'm currently flying in, which is air mode. And then underneath that, we've got our flight time. I do keep these flights relatively short, just purely down to the fact that it was raining, it was really, really windy, and it was also really cold as well. So I just wanted to sort of fly as hard as I could, as fast as I could, and get as many flights in. I think I got about 5 or 6 flights in a row. Really enjoyable. Really, really fun. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let the flying do the talking. And when you see the mighty flips, just remember I have never attempted a mighty flip in real life before. And this is what this drone actually did for me. So yeah, take that as you will. So I think we can all agree that was pretty wild. Some crazy flying that I've never actually done before. It was about 10 to 15 mile an hour gusts of the wind. It was about freezing, so about 0 degrees here in the UK. All things considered, it handled it really well. What we did do is we did break the canopy, as you can see here now. Now, thankfully, BetaFPV include a spare canopy. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to do. I'm going to show you how easy it is to do, but I am actually going to mess it up because I forgot to remember what it actually looked like. But basically, all you need to do, unscrew the screws. There's a screw underneath the bottom of the camera, as you can see here. Just make sure you unscrew that in a second. I'll get to that one in a second. Make sure you unscrew that before you try and pull the camera out. And then you can get your new canopy. And it's just a case of reversing it. Just remember to fold the front arms underneath. But we'll get to that in a second. That's the canopy done and removed. Keep hold of your camera would be my advice to you, so that you don't accidentally put it in upside down into the new canopy. So it's just a little bit tight there. So obviously if we put this in upside down now, we can't flick it around. So certainly not on the goggles I'm using anyway. So slide it in like that. You know it's the right way. And then just add that screw again. And away you go. So once you've added all the other screws, folded the arms down, you're pretty much done. It's just a case of putting the last ones in and you have repaired your canopy or replaced your canopy and you are ready to go out and rip again. And I think it's really great that BetaFPV do include a spare canopy, because that is the one thing that's going to take the hits before anything else. And obviously it's such a light quad that it's designed to be less robust, because you are saving that weight, aren't you? So it's fantastic that they do include one, and you can also buy them as well if you're going to go through a few. Truth be told, I will probably need to buy one or two. So we are going to start our community post or community spotlight here, and we'll flick to your comments in a minute. But I want to thank our members. We've got quite a few after this weekend. We've got Silicam Photography, Club Alexandra, Boy Wonder FPV, Connor Clark, Christopher Conkright, PT Puff FPV, Scottish Allen 420, Jamie Primnett, Reindeer, Han Solo, Doper FPV, Shaky FPV 21, Mark Duplex, Harry M Photography, JR FPV, James III of Boston, Phil Anderson, Not Here, Dizzy Dean FPV, Barry Morgan, and Only Drones. It costs just $1.99 a month to join them on the members bench, and you will get your name shared out in every one of these videos. If I haven't earned that, that's absolutely fine, but please do just hit the notification bell so that you do get notified when these videos are dropping. I'm going to drop them as often as I possibly can, and I would hate for you to miss them. Now, let's go to your comments. I will start with Digital Cruiser. I like the BZ121 GPS. Cheap, tiny, and works great. The Flyfish Nano GPS is great too. They're much smaller and lighter than the Rush you used. But I don't feel that quads should have, or all quads should have GPS. I just like having it for a speedometer. I actually only ever set up the return to home once for someone who wanted it. None of mine have it set up. First of all, Digital, thanks for the recommendations of a cheaper, smaller and lighter GPS unit. I do normally use the Flyfish Nanos, but the Rush was the only one I had in the studio at the time. But I've had a look at the BZ ones and they look phenomenal. So thank you very much for that. And Chris B says, you say everything Betaflight is PID default. It's absolutely not, mate. They didn't use the sliders to tune it. They entered the PID values manually at the top. The PID sliders then turn grey in the middle. And this is me admitting that sometimes I do get it wrong, and I am more than happy to own it. You're absolutely right. I was a little bit rushed when I did that section, and I only looked at the sliders and I moved on. Entirely my fault. Chris is entirely right. They did enter the values manually. Thank you very much. And finally, one of our new members, Boy Wonder, says, oh my God, I saw this in your studio and it's absolutely gorgeous. I wish I had one of these drones. Also, I love your reviews. You can definitely say they are definitely getting better. Well, thank you very much, Boy Wonder, and I appreciate that you have now become a member as well. So thank you very much. If you want to get your comment featured on the next video, leave a comment down below on this video. Make it funny, informative, or anything else in between. I'll pick one member comment, one negative comment, and one positive comment if I can, or whatever. But ultimately, we'll get one member featured and we'll get a comment from other people featured as well. So make it funny, make it informative, make it whatever you want, but just make it stand out. Right, let's get this video finished. One thing I've promised in these reviews is to bring you some decibels. The Air 65S hits about 65 decibels when at about 70% throttle in a quiet room right next to the sound meter. As we review bigger quads, what we're going to do is we're going to move outside and measure them outside. Now, before we get to the very end of the video, I am beta testing something called the Propodile. We all know that taking these props off these Tinywhoops are a real pain. And I've even had people in my DMs, because I posted this on Instagram at the weekend, asking me where they can get a hold of one. It's not out yet. I am beta testing it. It is bloody amazing. It's also really cute. It comes with a really cool story behind it as well. It is going to be available free on Printables, on Thingiverse, and anywhere else across the 3D print sphere on the 26th of February. So stay tuned, and I'll have more information as it becomes available. But so far, this is really good, and it will save your fingers immensely. So as always, we come to the final part of the show, and the question is, should you buy it? And ultimately, if you are in the market for a Tinywhoop that is one of the best performing that I have ever used, the answer is really very unequivocally simple: yes. If you don't want something that is necessarily analog, you are going to have to go with something with an 04, which is going to be slightly heavier than this. I do believe the newbie drone Hummingbird is even lighter than this, but it is restricted to just 25 milliwatts. And whilst we only tested this at 25 milliwatts, it's nice to have that extra power. So I would probably balance things out, and I would go with this because this is going to be the best all-rounder when it comes to performance, price, weight, and features. BetaFPV have done a really, really good job. I'll leave a link down below. It is an affiliate link. It won't cost you any extra to use it, but it does tell BetaFPV that actually I am worth sending new drones to get out to you guys, to review to you guys, and to give you guys a really good close-up, detailed look as to whether or not it's something you want to buy. So if you are going to buy one, I'd appreciate if you did use that link. Speaking of links, if you listen to this link now and click on the video in the end screen, it'll be related in some way, shape or form.